All right, we are live. I'm Donald Butler, the CEO of Butler Square Consulting, and today is going to be a wealth of information. I hope you have your pens, your paper, and take some good notes. This is going to be a really powerful discussion about estate planning. Now, listen, one of the things that I'm super excited about with this particular session is we are educating our clients. We're educating you to help you to understand some of the things that you can take advantage of as a tax-paying citizen. And one of the things that I want to make mention is at least 99.5% of the tax laws are written for you to save money in taxes. So I try to tell all my clients all the time, listen, you're going to have to go back and do some homework so you can write off more stuff, but you need documentation, of course. So this session, I'm going to bring on one of my business partners, Melson Tooks, to come on live with me. Welcome, Melson. I'm glad you're able to join us today for this accountant roundtable discussion. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good, Donald. Hey there, everybody.
Yeah, so this is going to be a great discussion, Mel. I think that most
Mhm.
people, are going to get some really good notes out of this particular roundtable discussion. And but
Mhm.
introduce yourself for me really quick.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Donald. Again, my name is Mel Tooks. I am the president and owner of Goshen Consulting LLC, a full-service accounting and tax and business consulting firm here in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm also one of the contractors with Butler Square Consulting as one of the contracted business specialists. So I assist Mr. Butler and the Butler Square team with nonprofit filings for those looking for 501c3 status, as well as the MBE, Maryland, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise certification here in the state of Maryland as well for those who are looking to do business with the federal government as well as state governments as well. So I'm just here to chime on in and help you out as needed, Donald.
Absolutely, Mel. Well, that's what we do as business partners.
Yep.
This is a growing industry. We're seeing a lot of people are getting into business. And one of the things that we want to talk about today is how to be compliant, even in business. I think
Yes.
one of the main reasons why we're doing this accountant roundtable discussion is to provide our clients and some of the people that we're connected to with some good information. One thing that I believe that's very important is hearing from your accountant, hearing what they have to say. Like, what do we have to say? We see your books, we see your financials all the time. But one of the things is what is important for you and how we can tailor this experience for you, right? So this is very important and very key, good information. So I'm going to welcome Marie Wolf to the platform as well. And welcome, Marie. Thank you so much for joining us for this accountant roundtable discussion that Butler Square Consulting is hosting for our clients. And I'm glad you could join us today.
Well, thank you so much, Donald. It is a pleasure to be a part of your show. In meeting you, there were so many wonderful things that I was able to learn. In fact, as we are educators, over the last 2 days, I was able to learn quite a few things from you. So thank you for that. So,
You're very welcome. That's what we do. We share information. But look, I have my pen, my notepad. I'm ready.
all right.
So I know our clients are going to be ready too. But Marie, please introduce yourself to my audience here.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Marie Wolf, and I'm the president and CEO of Wolf Core and Wolf Core Training Academy. At Wolf Core, we specialize in advocacy, mediation, and business consulting. We provide a lot of legal document preparation. We are certified. I'm also a member of the Maryland State Bar Association as well as the American Bar Association. With Wolf Core Training Academy, we train a variety of different subject matters, especially matters that really need to be adhered to within our community, such as estate planning. That's something that, so many other communities have been, advised on and they've been able to utilize. But when it comes to our community, sometimes we're just not as well versed, not because we don't want to, because the information has not been made available to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is going to be a great roundtable discussion, and we're going to lead off with sort of kind of give us some key points about estate planning that you feel as though that is very necessary for people to take away from with them, even as they're thinking like, is estate planning for me? It seems like a very intimidating process when you're thinking estate planning. Do we have an estate, or how does that look, or what is included in an estate? So kind of like define that for us. Like, what are some key takeaways that we can start, the objectives of estate planning?
Gotcha. Well, I'll start off with a brief story. When COVID hit, none of us were prepared for it. We weren't ready for, the leniencies that were taken away from us and being able to check on our loved ones and to know that they're okay. When COVID hit and people went to the hospital, no one was allowed to go in other than that particular patient. In my particular situation, one of my family members was in the hospital. And of course, here I am the very loving parent, parent. And, I couldn't find out what was wrong with my child. The good thing is that even though he's an adult, I had something in place. It's called a healthcare proxy. Okay. That's one of the initial and most important things, in my opinion, when your child turns 18 years of age. Yes, you are the parent, and there's some things that you're able to do to speak for your child. But then again, it depends on the provider, depends on the hospital, depends on the nurse or the administrator and what they require for you to be able to provide to let them know that you were actually authorized to speak. So in doing so and being ahead of the game with that, I was able to make sure they knew three things: what my son was allergic to, what his medical parameters were, and his background. Because when you go into the hospital in the emergency room, they don't know these things. You're like a new person to them. They don't have a profile. They don't have the background unless you provide it to them. They don't know the medication you're taking. They don't know what you're allergic to. They don't know anything. And so they're going by the best parameters they can to provide the best service possible. So that's the key thing I think is most important. The second is, most recently, I received really sad news. A childhood friend that I grew up with, she just lost her son.
Wow.
They took him off of life support. Now, her son was 28 years old. So when you think of things like that, when we prepare our, living wills and medical directives, our last will and testaments, our trusts, those things that kind of solidify our estate, we assume that we will be able to take advantage of that when we're in our 60s, 70s, and even when we say 60s, that seems too soon for us. But you never look and think and say, I need to prepare a will. I need to prepare, a trust or any of these things for a 28-year-old young man. So it's never too early for us to prepare these documents to be able to, one, protect our families, as well as protect our estate. Because unfortunately, if we don't take charge, and depending on how the orphans court rules it or the register of wills, they take over, the state takes over, and they decide who's in charge of your belongings in your estate and who's not. So you don't give yourself the opportunity to give your best or well wishes for yourself when you can no longer speak for yourself once you've passed on. So those things are very important, and it's never too early to start preparing.
Wow, you made some good points here. Something I took away from this, just listening to this, is just, it's not too early to start. What is kind of the, somebody may say, well, I'm in debt. What do I have as far as an asset that I can leave, or that this would be beneficial to me, because I'm drowning in debt. I have student loan debt. I have, a mortgage. What does that look like for that kind of person?
Well, for that kind of person, I would say this: no matter what, if you're drowning in debt or not, you have family. If you don't have a family, you have something. You have a vehicle. Let's say something that's paid in full. It could be even down to the things that your loved one would remember you most by. In mediation, I'll tell you this briefly. In mediation, the families that I've met with that fight the most, they're not fighting because they're greedy. They're not fighting because they want what that loved one has. They're fighting because they're grieving. And they don't know what last portion or what last item they can hold on to, because they know they're never going to see their loved one again. So wow. The majority of the families that I have mediated with, they are in a position of pain. So 9 out of 10, that loved one didn't prepare for life insurance or burial insurance. So now they have a GoFundMe fund. You have to have a GoFundMe fund, or you have to go to everybody in your family to try to solidify and friends, family and friends, and borrow, which that's not always the best way to do things. Because unfortunately, in a situation that I've experienced in the past, The family members didn't have assets like that. They may have had a paid off old vehicle or a few bonds or things like that, but nothing that would accumulate to the cost of a burial, which can be anywhere at the cheapest point of 10 grand to 20 grand now. It's not the same anymore. So the one thing I would say, if you're in a position where you are not financially set, because we've all been there, I would make sure to obtain some type of life insurance. And if your health is at a point where you can't, reach out and try to solidify some type of burial insurance or something that can then move forward to help your family along the way.
Very true. Yeah. Mel, do you have any questions for Marie so far?
Oh, no, not at this time. I do had a couple that's going to kind of come up because I know this is kind of her area of expertise, but I will most certainly chime in as we go along.
Yeah, so I found that what you said, like, people are not just fighting or they're not fighting because of the things, but they're holding on to memories. Yes. And that can be a very emotional moment. And a lot of times, even from that perspective, is like, whether you have a mortgage or whether you don't have one, it's still important to have that discussion. And I think that estate planning is so important. I mean, listen, I'm guilty of it. I didn't start estate planning when I was young either, and it's funny because somebody say, you're young, you're not young. I mean, I'm young and, but I'm not in my 20s. And I thought it was way too early in my 20s, but now I'm realizing even more how important it is to make sure you at least have something set up for you. And taking, so I'm thinking, Marie, that when we thinking of how people could benefit from this, we see it from the perspective of planning, like allocating, your resources or your assets appropriately. So that way it's not just, handed over to probate. And so that's one of the benefits. But let's say, like, if someone says, well, where do I start? Where does this begin? How would you begin that conversation, or where should they start that discussion?
Well, the discussion first, in my opinion, this is the way I've done this with my children. I have 2 older children that are in their 20s and they're married and they have their own families. And then I have 3 younger children. And the way that I have moved forward with them, my older children, is this. First thing, 18, I had to have the healthcare proxy. You can healthcare proxy, you can list 2 people or 3 people. Mom had to be one of them. Regardless of the wife or husband, mom had to be one of them. And the number 1 person on that list. And that's where I would start, but the other thing past that, I would then start with the last will and testament. It's something that we don't want to think about. There are 2 guarantees in this world. People will be born and people will pass away. And the thing is, in coming into the world, you have that first step, you take that first breath, and leaving, we take our last. So the last will and testament is very important. And I think that anyone that takes the time, we have lots of questionnaires and lots of forms that can go along with it. And as well as, I'm sure you all do too, but it's important to be as detailed as possible. A lady that I know, and I created her will, thankfully, she has 4 daughters. She was one who loved jewelry, expensive jewelry. So in us sitting down, I said, you have daughters. Each one of them are going to want to have a piece of what their mom had because of memory to pass down generations and generations to come. I said, so let's stipulate who gets what. Therefore, there are no questions with your children. They are not arguing. They're not fighting. She even went to her favorite outfit, her wedding dress. Her first daughter got the wedding dress, things like that. It went back to her prom, she went to 2 proms, but her first prom. And she disseminated all those things so her daughters, who were very close to her, wouldn't have that type of grievance with each other on who got what. So therefore, they had no way of thinking whether one wanted the diamond or the natural stone. It didn't matter because mom said you got this. So it makes it easier when we are detailed. It's extremely important to do that, because then it doesn't leave any open wounds for the family in terms of, okay, you're trying to take that, but I want it. Because the grief sets in. So be as detailed as possible on your last will and testament. Make sure everything is lined out. There's also something that we do which is the end of life agreement. So with this end of life agreement, we make sure, and I've talked to several couples and they've made it fun. They're like, when you know, we make when we take that step into the next life, meaning the afterlife, we want our children to celebrate what they had with us. We don't want them to grieve, even though we know they're going to grieve. So one couple, they made sure they set out the type of food they wanted their children and family members and friends to eat, the type of music. They created videos. They wanted,
Wow.
A presentation of the photos of all the times that they all had together and they shared. And then, of course, they made those stipulations down to, the plot, which cemetery. They even actually paid for it in advance so the children wouldn't have to worry about that. And they also went through the process of exactly where they wanted the repast to be, the church they wanted to go through their homecoming. So therefore, and actually they even went to the point of what they wanted on their obituary. So they wanted to make sure their children, because they knew they wouldn't be in the right sound of mind, to then go through the procedures of what they wanted individually.
Wow.
So those things are important. And then we also have what we call, for those that are elderly, I have quite a few clients that have elderly parents. And unfortunately, as our parents start to get older, their health starts to decline. Some have Alzheimer's, some have memory loss. A lot of different things start to happen with them. So they're not where they were in their youth when they could handle things. So a power of attorney is very important. There's several types of power of attorneys. The one that is most likely to be most effective is the durable power of attorney. Okay. And they also have the revocable and irrevocable, which is very important as well. So those things give the loved one the ability to speak on their behalf if they can't speak for themselves. So that's also something that's important. You can have stipulations in there because, of course, sometimes we may give somebody a power of attorney and their ability to be able to speak for us, and they may overstep their bounds. But there are laws and rules with that to be able to stipulate exactly how far you want them to be able to take over in the event that you can't do for yourself. So those things are very important to sit down and talk about with family, who you would trust in terms of taking on that role if that time ever came to be the case. The other thing with the estate planning, if you have children, and it doesn't matter how young you are, we think we're going to outlive and we're going to see our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, because that's what it is in our hearts to be able to see. You want to see that legacy you've created. But sometimes these things don't happen. A friend of mine, unfortunately, I heard some terrible news. Two of her friends, unfortunately, were killed at the same time, two parents.
Wow.
So now they have children, that are under the age of 18 that are left behind. Who's going to come in? Who did they stipulate, to be able to take over, to assist their children in the next steps, their estate, things like that? Who do you then, have to depend on? A family member that'll step in and be, assigned depending on where you're located, the administrator or the, of the estate. And, what do you do at that point? So being prepared, even though it's something we don't want to think about. I know I didn't. I would like to think I'm going to live to be 150. But the fact is that, nature has its own. It's not likely. So I wanted my children to have the ability to say, especially when they were younger, I went through 3 family members, actually, in my best friend. And I said, if anything ever happened to me, I know you don't want to talk about it, but we got to talk about it. I want you to know this happens, this happens, this happens. And these funds that are in the trust go towards my children and what I want them to do for their education, for their care, things of that nature. And I outlined everything. So as we just talked about the last will and testament and its importance, there's another document that's very important. It's called a trust. That trust, depending on what you have in terms of your assets, can also bypass probate. So those things are important for us to know because of the fact that sometimes, you can give your family an easier way because sometimes items, assets can be tied up in probate for a couple of years.
Very true. Question.
Sure.
The trust, is this a entity that they need to create, like a business?
Well, the trust in itself is something that I would recommend to be created by an attorney. Okay, yes. With that. Yeah. It's most important because there are different rules, stipulations, depending on your situation that need to be adhered to. But yes, it's definitely a tool that I recommend in addition to the will and the other estate documents to make sure that you obtain.
Absolutely. And I think that's very important. Another thing that I had a question about is intangible assets. How do you typically handle those types of things? And when I say intangible, referring to like if people, you have your cell phone, so there's plenty of apps that's on your phone that you purchase. Should, people think about those assets as well?
Most definitely. And that also can go into your will. And it can also state in your will who you choose to be able to have those things afterwards. Everybody's not meant to have that personal information, depending on what you have on it, which I hope is all, copacetic.
Right.
Some people have some really unique things on their phones, and you look and say, woo, I didn't know so-and-so was into this. But anyway. So we have to have someone we know that will have the decorum to see things and say, wow, okay, yeah, that's nice, and keep it to themselves. So it's very important to have a trusted person to be able to leave that password to and to stipulate exactly what you want them to do with your photos, your messages, those things. And, and with the phone too, and a lot of people don't think about this, the person that you give the opportunity to adhere to that personal information could be business, could be friends, anything it may be. They also can utilize that to reach out to those that you want to attend your ceremony.
Wow.
If you want someone to, because there's some stipulations too, you can get really detailed in your will. Well, some people don't want anyone more than family and friends, key detailed friends. They don't want the coworker or the boss or anybody else. They want certain people that shared life with them. Sure. And that shared life with them in a meaningful way before they left here.
Another question on this topic is, well, not really a question, but even feedback. A lot of times, I think that we as people tend not to take care of the minute things. We typically just live our day, we buying things all the time, but we're not thinking about, like you said, like what happens if I go? What happens to these things? And we see that from an accounting standpoint when we do, taxes. A lot of times people are not taking care of the small things, thinking that it doesn't matter from a tax perspective. But as we can see, it even matters when you're planning your estate, that having detailed information is so key to planning your estate, but also, with tax planning as well. So that's really good that you mentioned that. Now, I would love to see, hear your feedback in terms of, let's put, someone before you as an example. Person A comes to you and they have no clue what their assets are. All they thinking is, I have a car and a house. That's it. How do you go through that process to outline, going deeper to find out, well, what are your assets? Like a diamond ring, for example, or like, a suit or a dress that was, very cherishable, that would be something that they should consider adding to their estate for passing it down to someone else.
Yes. We have a checklist, okay? When we meet with clients, the checklist goes, what are some of the assets that you can think of right now? And then the other list is list additional assets that you may not know that you have, and you need to go back home and look through things. What's really important to you? And believe it or not, people will start sifting through things and find monetary value in things that like example, a diamond ring. There was one client I had who was married 3 times, beautiful lady, and she preceded 2 of her husbands. So she was widowed twice. And each one of the men bought her at least a $25,000 to $30,000 ring. And so those are paid off, those are monetary value and assets. So, placing those things is important to list everything you have. Right. And then there's silver, there's gold, there's, different things that old china, heirlooms. People don't think about those things that are passed down from generation to generation to generation, because they then have not just the physical value within, personal value, but they also have monetary value. So this is something that is very important to do. Now, in reference to the others, there's something called a just in case form that we have, that we like to disseminate for everyone to fill out that we work with. The just in case form is just that. List down all your bills, list down what's paid off, what's not, Okay, if you're incapacitated for XYZ amount of time, and the person you provided its power of attorney, if your spouse and you are incapacitated at the same time, or if you are single, it's important for those things to continue. What bank accounts you have, your 401k, your savings plans, your annuities, all those things are important to have in one place. Your code to your safe, if someone needs to get in there to get the proper documentation that's necessary to help you and assist you. So the just in case form lists everything: your children's date of birth, their social security numbers, where the health insurance cards are, where your health insurance cards are. You're on Medicaid and a supplemental insurance. What is it? What are you allergic to? What, so I'm sorry, I'm like going a little overboard.
No, this is good.
This is good.
What's needed. So nothing in the just in case form is just enough, because just in case, we don't know what situation we may be put into, the mortgage holder, things like that. So, whether you rent, whether you purchase, you're purchasing your home, those things are important, because if you are incapacitated for a long time, the person that's helping you is going to need to know that. So basically, your private life becomes open to the person you can divulge and trust. Everybody's not meant to be trusted. So it's very important to know exactly who you decide to give those permissions to.
Marie, you hitting on some really good info, and Mel know what I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah.
To each his own. We respect all of our clients, people that we're connected to, but we see a lot, especially when you're thinking of who you trust, and kindly enough, we have could we say Jack and Jill, they're married, and Jill doesn't trust Jack anymore because they've been married for X amount of years. But it's like, well, what happens if something happens to Jack or Jill and they never went through this process? And kind of give us like some high points as far as how the orphan court works in that situation when things weren't planned. They did not come together to talk about estate planning. What happens when it gets to, the level of the orphan court?
Well, I'll tell you this, and it's funny that you state that, because there was a couple that were married for approximately 30 years. And, in the old days, it was, I'm sorry to say that, just kind of telling my age a little bit, but,
it's fine.
and their values were different. The values were at a point where, even though you were going through 30, you work it out. You keep your family together. That's the first thing, especially down south. If you have any family members down south, how they work it. It's like, unless there's a bearing of a doubt, you work it out. So even though they, kind of grew apart, they were still married. But the husband had 5-6 accounts elsewhere, the wife didn't know about. So then you have to do something called an asset search. Okay. And that's a sad thing.
Asset search.
Because do an asset search. And unfortunately, sometimes you find that in certain situations, and this is not all, because of very rare situations, that this may happen. But what I've experienced in the past is that, a husband may have had a house with another wife you didn't know about. Things like that. Not a wife, a side person in their life. And we're being really real here. These are the things that people actually experience, and it's sad. And I'm not trying to bring the negativity into it, but it is real. And so the wife, of course, is the one who legally on paper is bound to his assets. Hey, this is what was acquired after you got married. That belongs to her. But in situations like that, that other person is looking and saying, well, wait a minute, he and I acquired this. Yes, you may have, but you knew he was married and that's his wife. So hey, deal with it. So you kind of go through things like that, and people find out things when people pass away that you don't even want to know. Now, I will say this, in situations that a couple of people have found out that I've worked with over the last 15 years, when someone passes away, people, things that were hidden all come to light. So you have to say it. Yes, to what you may find, but stay level-minded and stay positive on the fact that they're human. They were human just like you. And just do the best that you can to make sure, regardless of the situation, to make sure that you do things correctly. So then your question for the orphans court, they then at that point will just assign, someone may come to them Of course, they would have to. They will assign the administrator or the executor of the estate, and that person will have the responsibility to do what's right. Now, if they don't, that responsibility can be revoked from them as well.
Got you. Is that person a family member, or is it?
Can be.
Okay.
There are some cases where people don't have family, like the elderly. And I'll get next, I'm going to talk about the personal care form for the elderly. But there's some situations where people really don't have anybody. You know, there was a 79-year-old lady that was a friend of my daughter-in-law, and she passed away. She left her to be the executor, and then she went searching for a family and found, you know, someone in her family that she actually said, hey, you know, she passed away, and we will let you know this is your family assets. A lot of people don't do that. You know, they would then just become the executor of the estate. They'd either get someone to come in and either take it or donate it, or they would then, you know, sell it, you know, whatever they need for the estate, which there are a lot of ramifications of that. So please don't go out there and do that. But, you know, that makes sense in terms of how things work. So there are people that don't have anybody. And if, let's say, for example, if someone did not have anything, then of course the state would then take over.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. That's this. And so there's a case, or there's a situation everybody will ask me about. Chadwick Boseman. Can you kind of give us, if you're familiar with that situation, give us kind of like the bullet points of what could have been done in his situation? Because I think people were taken off guard with that. And I take that, well, this is a lesson learned that we all can learn from and say, okay, it's time that we consider to do, you know, what we need to do with our own assets. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, honestly, I have to be forward. As I mentioned to you when we first met, I'm not as familiar about that, but what I do know is that he passed away. I believe it was from cancer, and he was very young. So I can't really speak on that because I don't know the full ramifications of the situation.
Got you.
But let's use this as hypothetically. Let's say, for example, we know someone that, you know, has accumulated a great deal of assets, and they are not well. They know they're not well, and they weren't able to obtain life insurance or something like that prior to, because of course, you know, as soon as they hear the ding, ding, ding bell that you're not well, they start to increase it to a point where you can't afford it, or you just can't get it at all.
Very true.
So I would then at that point make sure that, you know, paperwork is in order as much as possible, because even if you become ill, you're not expecting to leave here tomorrow, but we just don't know how our genomes or our bodies going to progress in terms of anything that unfortunately may be, you know, may be within our health levels. Yeah. So we pray that, you know, we can fight and beat things and move forward, but we just don't know. So I can't really answer that question.
I'll tell you what, like saying like in this situation, and because I don't have all the details of the case, but I think his significant other of many years did not get a hold of his assets because he didn't have things in place. So if someone is dating someone, or if they live with someone, they're in a relationship, you know, how does that situation work where they've been together for 10, 15 years, but now they're in a situation where one of them passed away? How does the assets get allocated in that situation?
I would have to say, in my personal opinion, not professional, but personal opinion here, it depends on the state and where you live, because, you know, in some states you can live with the person for a certain amount of time, become a common law wife. And so those things would have certain rules and stipulations that would give them the ability to do certain things. And then there's some states that don't even adhere to something like that. You just, you know, got a roommate for however many years. So I think it would be depending upon the state in which you live in. If you're dating somebody for a long time and just kind of like have to go with that, and, you know, what family members may come in, it would depend on a lot of things. It would have to be by case basis, I would assume.
Got you. That makes sense. So it's based on the state where they live and what the state laws are. So yeah, that's good information, but that's good to take away. Can we shift into the compliance area that you work in?
Oh, sure. So before we do that, I wanted to say one more thing. So if you have any parents that are elderly, make sure that are family members that are elderly, make sure you complete a personal care form. That personal care form will basically give the ability for them to speak to you and tell you exactly how they want to be treated, what things they prefer, if they want to, have certain medications, if certain medications they don't want to have, just how they prefer to be treated when they go to, the doctors or to the hospital. It's just a form that kind of gives like the care factors so they can still have a say in what takes place with them. So I just want to put that in there real quick.
When is it too early to fill out this personal care form for elderly? Because I'm already going to say I want to be treated with royalty. Okay, so.
You know what? You're not there yet, but I will say this, and this is going to sound, really sad to a point, but there are a couple people that I've encountered through clients that were 32, 33, 34 years of age, and they had different illnesses like ALS and things like that actually started to dissipate. And that's an early stage. You would think, wow, that person's really young. How did that happen? We don't know, because we don't know what our bodies are going to produce and what's going to happen to us. So I think it's very important, honestly, to start as soon as you are in your 18, definitely your healthcare proxy medical forms. A lot of people then tend to get married young. I know one of my children got married right out of high school. I couldn't have told them anything if I wanted to, but they did what they wanted in their heart, and they did the right thing. And I have beautiful grandchildren, yes. And they're doing very well. But I would say it's never too young to start all of these things, because of the fact that 18, you're technically an adult. In my opinion, I don't see that until someone's able to really get to know the world. But yes, technically by law, 18 is an adult. You can go into the military, you can start a life, but 18 was where I would start there. And then also I would start the next steps of, I hate to say it this way, definitely a will. Even if you haven't accumulated those assets, you can always add a codicil to a will. So that's this like pretty much like an addendum, So those things are also very important, because as time goes on, things are going to change.
Mm-hmm. Wow. This is a wealth of information.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Hey, Donald, can I chime? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Two main things that I was been taken away from this conversation, and I'm glad, Marie, you shared wonderful nuggets that are so necessary. These conversations need to be had. As difficult as they may be. And this is not even really an emotional conversation, because you're talking about assets. Yes. And you're talking about, even from like Donald and I's arena, with the tax ramifications with inheritance taxes and transfer taxes and all these different types of things that take place in this. And the second thing I was thinking of, you guys mentioned about Chadwick Boseman. Another major item that comes to mind with this whole estate and planning is, you guys remember the singer Prince? I was reading something about that in the news the other day, and I remember when he passed away, it was a shockwave throughout the world. But the thing was that he was single, he was unmarried, no children, and as you know, he still has a catalog of music that is so extensive that was vaulted and never released to the public. So that can be hundreds, probably $1 billion worth of royalties on his music that are now left to somebody else to decide about. And the thing is that at the end of the day, you want to decide about your own affairs. You do not want somebody else coming in. Like now, you don't want nobody coming into your house, Donald, or your house, Marie. You do this, you do that. No, I know what goes on in here, and I know what I need to do. So the thing is that most certainly those wills, trust, even with trust, a lot of people utilize trust not only to keep it out of probate, but as a tax planning strategy. Because the thing is that you want to make sure that, hey, if I have to transfer all of the assets into this trust, complete custody and everything else, I want to make sure that I realize some of the tax benefit. I don't want that burden passed to my family or to my lineage, or I want it to exist in perpetuity. You follow? So most certainly, this is some great stuff. Thank you so much, Marie, for all your wealth of expertise in this area.
Oh, you're most welcome. And the one thing I want to point out too, just from your conversation, what you just stated, in terms of the power of attorney, I will tell everybody, make sure you know what type that you're getting into, because even before you're incapacitated, depending on the power of attorney you assign, that person can still at that point do all the duties that you've given them to do. So you could be in good, great sound body and mind, and you can say, okay, this is great. And this is hypothetical. I'm not saying this is what would be the case, but someone can then transfer a deed because of the fact that, you know, you've given them that ability to do so. So you want to make sure in your power of attorney that you have some limitations. Limitations are very important to have it stipulated exactly what the understanding would be. So that's what I'm going to say about that portion. And then we talked about trust. Now, trusts are very important, but they're not just for the personal side. Trusts are also for your business. You can put a trust over your business. So let's say, for example, you build this $1 billion, let's say $1 million business, and you didn't complete it, which of course, if you're at that point, you generally would complete an operating agreement. Well, the operating agreement also stipulates exactly who you would prefer to take over the management and the operations of the company if something were to happen to you. It stipulates more than that. But those are the key things I'm bringing out because of the fact that we're talking about estates here, okay? Now, you can also put your business in a trust over your business as well. And those things are very important. So, you know, in another, if you bring back on your show, we can definitely talk about how the ramifications work with that, you know, compliance.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, and I know there's a part two. I already know. So absolutely, Marie.
Thank you.
No, we definitely appreciate that. Shifting gears to compliance, I'm definitely interested to hear your perspective on compliance.
In terms of the estates, in my opinion, it's very important. You know, there are a lot of companies out there that also provide the legal document preparation. They're certified, things like that. And, you know, there people could be, you know, paralegals or, you know, lawyers, whatever it may be. Your comfort level and my preference would be for you to definitely utilize those services through those that have experience and most likely an attorney or someone under the direction of an attorney, because there may be some situations and cases that are different and differ that they may not be well versed to. A lot of people like to turn to what they call the legal Zooms and things like that. Now, if one shop all was for everybody, then everybody will be doing it. But the thing is, it's impossible for LegalZoom to be able to provide the necessary items and situations that will adhere to each particular case. And all of our cases are different. So when you're getting these forms taken care of and filled out, make sure you're going to viable sources.
Very true. I'm glad you mentioned that because, you know, a lot of times these companies are set up like McDonald's, you know, nothing against McDonald's, but they're set up to handle volumes of people, but not to tailor their services specific to that individual. And so when I tell people, you know, what you want, 10-star, 5-star, or 1-star, if, you know, depending on what you're looking for, a lot of times, you know, when someone comes to Marie, for example, they're getting that 10-star treatment because you are getting into the details. You're getting into their business, the weed of their personal life, the weed of their, you know, business life, and really pulling it out to make sure that we address all of these things. Let's lay it on the table. But when you go to a more commercialized type of company, they're not getting into the weeds of those, and it's really just answering the mail. Let's just give you what you want and let's move forward. So that is very important too. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Well, you know, I always think of it this way. Yes, sometimes with larger companies, they don't have the ability to treat a person with that independent connection. I would say it like that. And sometimes they treat people like they're just a number. When you're going to get service, remember, customer service is vital to the success of every business. And something Maya Angelou stated, something to the fact of, you may not remember everything somebody says, but you'll remember how they made you feel. Those relationships and connections are key, because not only are you, meeting with the people you meet with as a client, you're supposed to be building relationships and giving back to the community. And the way that I'd like to think that people should further understand is, how are you going to connect with people? Whether you're in a business or not, this is just everyday life. You could walk into a store and you could meet somebody, as often as happens to me. I go into the grocery store and some nice little lady comes up and she, she starts talking. And I love it because it's one, it makes me feel like, wait a minute, she saw me as a person she didn't know as being approachable. And we would sit there and have probably 30 to 45-minute conversations, and this has happened to me quite a few times. But I think in this life, we have to think about a few things because, again, we will babies will be brought into this world and people will leave this world. We have to think about how we're going to impact people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the most important things. When we leave here, do we want people to have disparaging things to say about us? Or do we want them to remember the things we did to give back to the community and to be good to each other? I always saw this growing up as, I always wanted to create something amazing that would last even beyond when, I left this physical plane. Because what we give back to children, to society, to people matters. Because remember, it's not just us, and especially in our community, we have a certain responsibility. As people see us, they look at us for, I like those attributes. Maybe I should do the same thing. We are examples no matter what in our actions, in what we do, how we treat others. And I think that this gives us an opportunity to break certain ways of living in generational cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So we can take from these things, especially in repasses and things like that, to see and be thankful for, the opportunities we have to be able to give back and speak with others. And this brings me to another thing. So a lot of times, within the orphans court, and I can't speak for every county, I can't speak for every state, but I've noticed in those that I have been able to experience that there has to be a certain level of empathy. Mm-hmm. Empathy is important. All of us within all of our cultures, we have different ways of grieving. When we go to church, we have different ways that we celebrate the Lord, in Baptist church, Methodist, whatever it may be. We have different ways of doing things. And I think that a lot of these courts don't understand us as a community and how we grieve. And the thing is that a lot of emotional adherence needs to start being placed instead of just assuming that we as a culture or other cultures are just, not well set because we have different ways of expressing ourselves. And the thing is, a lot of these different entities don't understand that. So they stereotype or they see us in a different way. So I think that's also important too, to have that second level of understanding in a lot of these government institutions and in the churches and so forth, and see people for people, not for what they think they see.
Totally agree there. Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. Good information. Now, Marie, this is a lot of information, of course, and you have a training institution or a training academy, Wolf Corp Training Academy. Tell us a little bit more about that academy, and congratulations for having that. I think it's so necessary. But tell us a little bit more information about it.
Sure, definitely. So we have now been an entity, of course, in good standing for over 15 years, and initially started through quite a few different avenues. I noticed that there were a lot of youth that, needed a step up. They didn't want to go into the military, but they needed help with other things. So of course, some of these young men and women, they may not have the ability to have someone pay for their college. So I would then kind of bring them together, those that were brought to me, and say, hey, look, you can do this yourself. I put myself through school. You can do the same. Trust me, if you want it, you can go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not make those excuses. Let's do what we have to do. And so then they would say, well, I don't really have the skill set. I just graduated from high school. I said, can you type? No. Do you want to learn how to type? Of course I do. Okay. So you can speak, right? And they start laughing and say, do you want to learn how to speak more so in the realms of customer service? Yes, indeed. Okay. So now you can type, how to talk. We know that you're very articulate, brilliant young people. So now, do you want to learn different software programs? Do you want to learn Word, Excel, those things that get you into an institution where you can start making $20, $25 an hour and put yourself through school? Do you want to do that? And so it started from that point, and then I'd bring other people in that specialize in teaching, Excel, Access, Visio, Word, those things that were very important for them to understand and learn. So that was another part of it. Then we also had an affiliate who also spoke Spanish. And I asked her, I said, would you be interested in giving some children time on a weekend? She goes, would I? She goes, I have nothing to do. I said, good, now you do. So then I'd bring her in and, she would then, sit down and speak with them. She's from Honduras. So of course that made it easier. She's a natural, native of the Spanish language. And then that would go from that point. Now with me in particular, the key things that out of the variety of different training programs that I administer, the key that's based on today is this: dealing with the seniors. There's so many seniors that didn't understand exactly what these things were. No one wanted to tell them. And some people would take advantage of them by presenting certain documents to them, like power of attorney and things like that. So I would reach out to the senior centers within Maryland and nearby, and I would say, hey, look, and it's in the churches, and say, hey, we have a program. I'd like to be able to talk over the basics. It's free of charge, but it's just the information and training to give you the opportunity to know exactly what it is. So prime example, I went to a dinner last month. Last month and a half ago. And this dinner was the Kennedy dinner. Was basically candidates come in, they kind of talk about different things and they were, present and so forth. And the young lady who was the candidate sat beside me and she said, you know what? What is the orphans code? It's something how people can do this wonderful thing for these babies. And I stopped for a minute. And I said, well, sweetheart, you know what? Everybody would like to think that because of the name. And then I took the time and explained to her exactly what it was. And she was very thankful for that. So the same thing with the seniors that can understand and are capable of understanding what the Orphans Court provides in the estate planning process. We sit down and we go over the basics. We go over what is a healthcare proxy. What is a living will with medical directive? What is a last will and testament? What is a trust? What is a person? We kind of go over everything because it's important to me not to be able to just provide certain services, but more important for everybody that I work with to understand what those things are. When people understand, fear is something that's no longer there. And they understand exactly what they're getting into. They understand exactly what they can utilize as a service, as a that can better assist them within their lives.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now your link to your academy, what's the address for it so we can make sure people are directed to your website?
Sure. Okay, so there are two, because of course we have Wolf Core, which deals with advocacy, mediation, and business development consulting. And then of course there's the academy. So of course, because it's such a long name,
okay,
we have changed that to www.wolfe-corp.com. So it's wolfcorp.com wolf-corp.com.
Got it. So I think this is it, right?
Yes, that's it.
Awesome. So people will know where to go and find you. Can they also set meetings up through this particular website to meet you?
Most definitely, but let me do this because we are actually having our website transition to make it easier to provide additional services. What we're moving forward to, as well as the why we're going through this transition, is to making it so certain training programs are available 24 hours a day. So therefore, if someone has a schedule where they can't get to us, or during the time frame that we actually provide the one-on-one live training, then they can actually utilize and purchase the service and be able to use it anytime they want to.
Awesome. Okay.
But I will provide this. I'll give you the numbers. So the key is that you can reach me at any time, or reach our company at any time, any of our affiliates, at 1-800-279-6384.
Awesome. I'm going to post that for everyone that want to reach Marie Wolf, 1-800-279-6384. Marie, this was just a power-packed segment, and we really appreciate the time that you've taken to speak to our audience here. And so thank you again. But listen, are there any final words or comments or anything you'd like to share before we end this particular presentation?
Yes, indeed. We'd like to be open and available for questions, if needed. So we're adding a chat to our website. That's the other thing that will be an added welcome to me, because then anyone who has a question, they can reach out to me or our affiliates, and we can get back with you. But until that happens, I'm going to also provide my email address. And if anyone has any questions and would like to reach out to me, you can always send it there. And my email address is admin@wolfe-corp.com.
Awesome. So here's a way to email Marie Wolfe, admin at wolfe-corp.com. Marie, thank you so much. Once again, we really appreciate you. Mel, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask Marie?
Oh, no, this is absolutely great. Thank you so much, Marie, for all of your expertise in this area and letting us know that these are important conversations to have. I've seen it in my own family where not having the power of attorney and the healthcare proxies and all literally was devastating. You're sitting there watching people fight like fools because they were losing their mind because no, that advanced planning had not been done. But thank you so much for this. And thank you again, Donna, for the invitation today.
Absolutely. Marie, if you can hang on backstage, if you can't, we understand timing is very important, but I want to share something. Mel, hang on with me here, but thank you so much. And we are excited. So what I want to share before we go, we always like to share accounting and tax updates. And so I want to share something with you all that is really going to be helpful. Let me share my screen really quick because I think that this will put some context behind some of the discussions about business. And basically one thing about business is the benefits from a tax perspective. And many times people are trying to figure out how to save money in taxes, but what are we doing to save money in taxes? There is something called a cash quadrant, and it depends on where you are in that cash quadrant, right? So I'm going to share with you here. There are two sides, okay? And in this cash quadrant, we have one side where you are an employee, okay? And I'm going to abbreviate that. So employee, we also have the self-employed individuals. Some of you may have heard this before. If you have not, I want to make sure that you at least have an idea of what this looks like. The other side of this quadrant is business and also investing. Okay. So whenever you're thinking of, I want to save money in taxes, I'm paying a lot in taxes. Over here, you could be paying anywhere between $12K to up to even $40,000 in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do we save money in taxes on this left side of this quadrant? We have itemized deductions if you qualify. And some of those itemized deductions include like mortgage interest. You have taxes you pay, but they cap at $10,000. If you pay $20,000 in taxes, you can't write it all off, but you can write off taxes that you've paid, and also donations. And if you meet the threshold, I'm not going to get into all the details about it, but medical coverage as well, like not insurance, but actually medical expenses that you've incurred. In the math is 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. But that will give you or allow you to take itemized deductions. That's as much as this tax savings that we can do, right, Mel?
Yes.
There are some other things that may happen because of the pandemic and all that stuff, so when we take into consideration, COVID benefits, that kind of stuff, people have taken advantage of other, benefits. But from a business standpoint and investing standpoint, the tax savings are tremendous. Okay. So most of our clients, because most of our clients are business owners, and some of them have that W-2 income here, we're able to leverage a lot of this over here and have these tax savings. In business, just give me an example. Mel, list the business expense we can write off. I'm just coming up with stuff.
We could say advertising.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, marketing, that sort of stuff fits in that category.
Mm-hmm. Rent,
Rent.
insurance. Mm-hmm.
You also have your accountant that you pay for.
Mm-hmm. Legal and professional. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, lawyers. So if you're going to do estate planning, for example, this is legal. This is something you can write off. So, the IRS wants you to take advantage of these other services that you can write off in your business. Same thing with investing. So when we think investing, we're even looking at real estate investing. So
Mm-hmm.
being on the right side of this quadrant, you have so many benefits. But what is over here that's so important is keeping track of it. As we were talking about estate planning, you have to keep track with everything, all of your assets, the things that you own, even identifying if it's a business asset or if it's a personal asset.
Mm-hmm.
These things, they matter. And a lot of times what happens is we fall short in keeping track and could lose out on some deductions. And Mel, I'm gonna get your take on this. What is one of the key areas that most people miss out on in terms of their taxes? And I could think of a couple, but just kind of like brainstorming with you.
Oh, one that sticks right out because a lot of people use their automobile in their business going to and fro visiting clients. Depreciation.
Depreciation, absolutely. That is one of the key areas or one of the key deductions that many people miss.
Mm-hmm.
Now, depreciation, it also means that, and I'm sharing this with you, but you have to know, what did your last tax person do? Because when you put it, when you want to calculate depreciation, when you come, like say like to Butler's Great Consulting to get your taxes done, it's like, have you been taking depreciation when you first bought that asset? Because once you come to Butler Square Consulting, we have to start with where you are. So depreciation is very key. That's one of the key areas. And also appreciation. This is the intangible items that you have that you can appreciate. And so those types of things that you can take advantage of. And am I missing something? I'm sure there's so many other things we can cover, but just from a summarize or key, points here.
Yeah, those are the main ones because typically that's because you got the different types of depreciation and they can be several thousands of dollars. So no, that's one of the main ones. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say this to all of our business owners out there: keep track with your information because you don't want to miss out. Like, people will say, well, I'm trying to get my taxes done tomorrow. I need my taxes done. I need my taxes done. But if you owe $30,000 over here in taxes, make sure I spell this right. I don't even want to spell taxes right. If you owe $30,000 in taxes and you have a business, you're doing real estate investing, I would say we need to do more digging. Because there are things that you more than likely did in the previous year that you did not provide your tax professional. So we have to go through this cycle or this understanding of what did you do even from a personal standpoint. So I feel like even when it came down to the discussion about estate planning, as Marie was talking during that segment, it's like digging into what are your assets? What did you purchase? What did you buy during the year? Or what should we be tracking from a depreciation or appreciation standpoint, and giving you the option of taking advantage of the tax laws that are designed to help you to save money. Remember, like I said, 99.5% of the tax code is written for you to save money in taxes. So that must mean that there's a 0.5% that is collecting taxes off of our ignorance or our lack of knowledge. But we got to keep track with everything. We got to keep track with everything. If you want to get the deductions over here, this 30,000 could shrink to maybe 5,000 in taxes. But we need your help, so we got to work together as a team. So that's what we are here about. We're here to work together as a team to help you to strategize, to help you to basically make sure you have things in place that you can save money. But if those things are not in place, it presents challenges to help you to save money in the long run. But Mel, you have some really great feedback from doing taxes yourself. You've been doing taxes for how long?
Oh, the last 23 years.
Yeah, a long time. Mm-hmm. And same with me. We've been doing this over 20 years. We've seen a lot. And some things that you can even consider is, should I be a partnership? Should I be an S corp? These different things that may be able or may be beneficial to you as you're building your business, or you continue to generate revenue and leveraging that revenue. So just some key points here. Are there any tax updates, Mel, that you want to highlight that I didn't go over yet as we wrap up?
No, I think you've done a very good job thus far, Donald.
Yeah, so Mel is our business professional. We work together very well, our partner in business. So thank you so much, Mel, for joining us on this roundtable discussion. We got some great things we want to talk about at the end of this. So hang on, Mel, okay?
Will do.
So listen, you all, we're doing this at least every other week. So next time I'm bringing on another guest, and we're going to be talking about personal finances. We're going to be talking about building personal wealth as well as business wealth. But you all got to tune in. This information is it's free, obviously, but at the same time, we want you to take the information and do something with it. It's one thing to learn something, but it's another thing to take action. So the question is, are you ready to take action? Are you ready to move forward? Because next thing you know, December is going to be here. Before you know it, December, we're going to be in 2023. And the things that you said that you wanted to do just won't happen because you didn't put into action. But you have the team that's ready to support you and get it done. And that's what Butler Squared is here to do, is help you to get it done. We're bringing on some great people that's going to help us to facilitate this discussion, to educate you, to give you all the information that you need to help you to be successful in business. It's all about what are you doing? And the IRS has set it up for you to be successful. So no longer can you say that you don't have the tools necessary to get it done. No longer can you say, well, I don't have, listen, there's so many ways that you can do this, that you can make, there's QuickBooks. That's why we use QuickBooks. Why be in business? Why do you have a business and you don't use a software like QuickBooks? It's have QuickBooks, make it easier for yourself, and providing that information to the IRS if necessary. I'll give you an example. I'm an auditor, been an auditor over 20 years, and working with people, with our clients, one thing that I put on is my auditor's hat. How do I help you to survive an IRS audit? It's not that they're trying to take something from you. The question is, can you support what you've placed on your tax return? That's so important. Can you support it? If you can't support it, yes, they're going to say remove this deduction because you don't have any support there. It's not just about receipts. It's also about your profit and loss statement. We'll get into more details like that in our next segment, but you should have a profit and loss statement for your business. You should have a balance sheet. If you don't know these terms, the thing is, everybody didn't take accounting, but that's why you have an accountant. So we can educate you on these different things that you should have for your business. But thank you all so much for joining us today. And we're excited to have you join us for the next segment in 2 weeks. We'll be putting out an announcement. So tune into this channel, subscribe to this channel, like this channel, because you're going to get notifications when we go on live again. But we're excited about that. So thank you all so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day.